The South African Social Security Agency has recently been targeted by criminal syndicates and various attempts have been made to defraud its system. SASSA says its anti-fraud strategy has been continuously tested over the years by these criminals. It adds that successful arrests have continuously also been made by the justice system, which is securing significant convictions. We're joined now by SASSA Ceo Busisiwe Memela. Very good evening to you. Thank you so much for speaking to us. How many times have you fallen prey to this, and what is the percentage of the deflected attempts?
I think over the years we have been targeted by criminals, both particularly the syndicates that are working from outside the organization, and over the years they've continued to tempt people that work for the organization to work together with these syndicates. So it's difficult to say as to over the years how many times we've been targeted, but the exciting opportunity is that for the past 18 months we've been working together with the law enforcement agencies, having realized that we cannot win this war on our own. So both in Eastern Cape and KZN, and again also in Mpumalanga, we've been working very closely with all the law enforcement agencies to make sure that we begin to win the war in relation to this.
You mentioned the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. Are those the worst affected in terms of crime and these syndicates who are targeting your system?
There's quite a big syndicate that is working from KZN, but that syndicate, a number of them were arrested in the beginning of the year. But they are targeting Mpumalanga, also an Eastern Cape, and in some instances they've worked through in Gauteng. And it was again because we started working with the law enforcement agencies, because they would have to know as to how do our systems work so that we can make sure that we actually get the conviction, because without them getting the information on how they target the processes inside the organization, they would not be able to get the conviction.
So let's get straight into that, how they do that. There's been a couple in Bizana who were sentenced to 8 years and 10 years respectively for fraud amounting to about 1.2 million rands. How did they do this?
In terms of the approach that they've used, is they would take either unsuspecting people from outside, because the partner was working from outside the organization, targeting people's IDs, which to us looked legit because it's real IDs, and the internal staff member would then go into the system and create a fraudulent what you call grant beneficiaries that actually don't exist. And the person actually had to work together with some other people in Home Affairs, because that's where they would know as to who actually has got what ID and what the situation is.
I find that interesting, Ms. Memela, to say that an individual can actually create a grant recipient. Is that something that is not automatically created by a system? Is it something that's not streamlined based on certain conditions that are satisfied?
The conditions definitely have to be satisfied. The challenge that we had in the past is the fact that we needed to make sure that we automate the logs in the system, hence having worked on our control systems inside the organization, but also making sure that on the issues of fraud that we have low level of tolerance in terms of fraud that also gets perpetuated by people inside. Yes, the system is automated in a number of issues, but again, if you work inside and that's why when we do the audits, we need to make sure that we audit all the different trails to make sure that all the proof in terms of the documents over and above the ID, that they are actually in place, hence the constant audits that we do.
One of the convicted fraudsters is an employee of SASSA and had access to the SASSA system, as we're speaking about in this case, and the other a partner of the brains behind the fraud. Do you frequently do security checks on your employees?
Yes, we are actually putting in place a process of not just doing security checks, but to ensure that we understand as to what lifestyles our people are living, so that we can see as to where do people actually get money over and above the money that they get from.
But have you only just instituted this now?
In terms of the lifestyle audits, yes.
Yes.
It's a new process that we're putting in.
How many of your employees have been found to be complicit in these crimes? And if you do have a record, just if you could tell us what the punishment has been. Have people been suspended? Have people been fired? Have criminal charges been preferred?
No. We always do both because we need to make sure that we get people out of the system. So in terms of the teams that were found in Mpumalanga, it was the criminal charge that started first, but we need to also make sure that we get people out of the system over and above following the criminal charges. We need to do both because we can't continue to have people in our organization that are found foul and have actually appeared in a court of law. Yes, we understand that they have to go through the case and be proven guilty, but we can't leave them in the system whilst they go through that process.
Speaking of Mpumalanga, there was a case where 23 suspects appeared before the Nelspruit Regional Court for using identity documents of members of the public to register these fraudulent grants. How does this happen if you do have systems in place that are supposed to ward off such nefarious acts? So how does that happen?
How this happens is that members of the community, that's why we're indicating that members of the community also needs to assist us in this regard. They will claim to be disabled when they actually aren't, because they come into the office and they work together with the doctors in some instances. It's difficult for us to prove that. But what was exciting about the opportunity in Mpumalanga was the fact that one of the employees actually indicated that this was the modus operandi that they were driving, and hence were able to apprehend all of them working together.
Is there going to be looking into these doctors that are suspected to be complicit?
Oh, yes, definitely, because the doctors are people that work as part of the value chain. So in instances where doctors become part of this process, not only do we report them to law enforcement agencies, we also make sure that we report them to the medical association in instances where they have been used.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. That is SASSA CEO Busisiwe Memela. The Deputy Public Protector Advocate Kollega